We're all about making people happy through legendary events. And that clarity on our why and our how has been pretty revolutionary in figuring out what our lane is and then just crushing within that space.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast. I'm your host today. My name is Brett Gilliland, and every episode, my team and I get to interview amazing business owners who are successful in their own right. They've built something, they've gotten it off the ground, and they're sharing real lessons learned as they've done that. And then they're talking about current challenges or the next things to conquer if they want to keep growing their business. And we just love having these business owners with us. They give of their time. They give of their authentic self. And today's guest is no exception. I want to welcome Bobby Dutton to our show. He is the founder of GBM Six, and they do this really cool high production value events to have people having to help people have fun. And I'm going to let him talk more about that. But I went to his website. I encourage you to do the same, gbm6.com, and check out the cool things that Bobby and team are doing. Welcome to the show, Bobby. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Brett. I'm excited to chat about this stuff.
Well, before we chat about your journey as a business owner, as a leader, and some of the things you want to talk about, let's give our audience a little bit of a picture, maybe a mental picture of the types of things that you guys are doing with these events that you create and who you serve and what you're up to.
Absolutely. So we're all about making people happy through legendary events. And that clarity on our why and our how has been pretty revolutionary in figuring out what our lane is and then just crushing within that space. It's kind of all about the intersection of technical buttons and stuff. I'm an engineer by training. I went to school for computer engineering, but I always wanted to take that understanding to have some sort of emotional impact. And that's how I ended up in events. So today we work exclusively with colleges and universities doing large scale, highly technical, big crowd events, a lot of concerts, a lot of DJ shows and festival type stuff, and all kinds of other things that if it makes people happy and involves technology and electricity, we probably had something to do with it.
Yeah, a lot of sound is what I'm hearing you say. A lot
Yes,
of sound.
always been an audio nerd. Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. And I love the clarity, and we haven't even jumped into the lessons yet, but I love the why, right? The very clear purpose. We want to help people be happy through legendary events. It's tons of clarity there. And then you went a step further and say, we just work with colleges and universities. It's not
Yes.
everybody. This is what we do. The specificity of that is so amazing. And I bet that's created a lot of efficiencies, a lot of steadiness, not a lot of wiggle in the vision, not a lot of confusion about what we're doing. That helps the team so much. So thank you for starting with that without even we weren't even in the lessons yet, but you started with it. And that was amazing.
Yeah,
But
it's interesting. The clarity has been important because, especially within the event space, I've seen a lot of events companies say we are the premier events company for stage lights, sound, you name it. It's like no, like that's too broad. That's the whole jack of all trades and the master of none curse, and we've been very careful to steer clear of that.
yeah, I can tell you have, it seems like it's serving you really well. Let's get to the lessons that you've learned along the way. And, if there's some overlap with what we just talked about, that's fine. But I'd love for you to not go all the way back to the beginning where you were the super tech that did it all. But, you've gotten this thing off the ground. You have 6, 8, 10 people. You're starting to make that transformation from scrappy, gritty founder to capable business building leader, right? Like there's a thing there, and you've learned some stuff. I'd love for you to share whatever you think would be helpful for other business owners who are going through something similar.
Absolutely. Well, we already touched on the importance of specialization, and that's been really at the root of all of our growth. Over the course of the work and the history of the business, I've identified things that I was really excited to get good at. I was already naturally good at. I wanted to invest more time and money in myself to develop those tools. And I've hung on to some of those. I still like to do graphics. Every Tuesday, I give myself an hour to just play in Illustrator with whatever development on graphics is because I choose to. But the interesting thing that happens as you grow is you see the power of the specialists around you in the lanes adjacent to you. And I remember a conversation with a lighting guy, because I speak the language of lighting because it's been so close to what we do. And I said, I need 8 Martin Mac 250s and 25-foot 5-pin DMX cables and an Edison breakout from Camlock. I got a 100 amp service. I'm going to profile them as mirror images, blah, 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 blah. And the lighting guy said to me, that's fine, but you could just ask us, hey, I'm doing a show in a room that's this big. Can you give me bright lights? That's what they do, to go and have their own meeting about which fixtures should go where and how to talk to them. And that was really eye-opening for me, because all of a sudden I could see a much more scalable future, because I wasn't involved in every technical decision as they grew and grew. And it would get better because every decision that had been made at the granular level would be handled by someone who had time and information and power to creatively focus on something that they were great at. And that has been at the absolute core of all of our growth, both in terms of the product and the company. So as you get better at it, what I've seen is the outliers become more and more obvious. I'll say something like, oh, I had the best week. I just did all this stuff. I did some cool graphics. I had a great meeting with the lighting guys. And then I had to do these contracts, this paperwork, or this tax report for the state of Connecticut. It's like, it just drags me down. And it's like, wait, there are people that love tax paperwork in Connecticut, believe it or not. And there's people that do it all the time and love it and want more of it. And the more I can do to compartmentalize and outsource and empower people, the better. And so as it turns out, the more we've grown, the less detail we've had to focus on, because we're focusing on the integration of the right people. So we're sourcing people, we're identifying partners, and then we're giving everybody the right power and information they need to crush something they're good at. And that's what has made us grow since day one.
Yeah, and you get to focus at this level of purpose. It's like, we're gonna go help a lot of people have fun, right? Like
Yeah,
that's way
imagine
more
that.
fun than taxes in Connecticut or whatever, right? Yeah, no, I'm with you.
I know.
That's amazing. Good for you. Good for you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
any other thoughts come to mind when I say, are there other lessons you've learned as you've grown your business that might be applicable? I have a feeling they're applicable to way more businesses and business owners and business and industries than you might think. But what are some other lessons that you've picked up that might be useful to someone else?
Yeah. Well, from like a people and management culture standpoint,
Mm.
I've always been a fan of emergent structure, which makes some people cringe. But I'll have people either work as an intern or work part time, and I just know they're part of this team in the future. And so rather than saying, I'd like you to take on XYZ and this new title and try this thing, I'll sit down with them and I'll say, I want you around. I want to pay you, but you tell me, like, what do we need to be doing more of? Where's your brain going? What's next for us as a team? And I've got those meetings all the time, and they're great. And then in a year, we look back and we're like, oh yeah, he was the business manager. It makes total sense now. This person was the production tech or coordinator or client focused person. And so letting those specialties emerge has been really cool to build an organic space to let that happen. So typically, anyone who starts full time, their first role is special projects, because we have no idea what they're going to be doing. And
Well,
then in a
that's
year or two, someone else comes in as the new special projects manager, while that person goes and flourishes in the lane that they helped to create. And that's been awesome.
that is
The
cool.
other
That's a
thing I
great
think
idea.
is Thank you. The other thing I think is important is the term trust but verify. And I'm sure a lot of us have heard and talked about that, but it's so true. You can't just say, do this and then be totally hands off, because half the time it won't work out the way it needs to. So, at least for a while, you do need to circle back and be like, all right, how did this actually come together? Is that what we want? Do we stand behind this? Okay, good. Or, oh, you didn't do this or that, but I never really explained that to you. Here's why we've always done it a certain way. Yes, we can change that, but let's make sure you have the information you need to thrive. And that's been good too. And what happens is, after enough reinforcement and training and freedom, I find that eventually people build up the right momentum to shine in their lanes. And at that point, it's just a matter of getting out of their way. And so, even now, especially in a post-COVID world where we're mostly decentralized, to be able to just trust that my people are out there doing something useful, and when they get paid on Friday, like it was worth it, is great. So to not question that by default is a magical thing. So that, building that culture where it's kind of self management and accountability and organic growth, that's been really useful for us internally.
As I listen to you describe both those ideas, Bobby, that emergent org structure and this trust but verify, it occurs to me that there's something certainly interesting about the emergent thing. Most business owners, they're like, I have a need right now in this spot. Like they just like are need driven when it comes to hiring. And
Right.
it sounds like you're a little bit ahead of that, where you're like, we might not need somebody right now, but I want to bring somebody in that's the right fit with the right kinds of skills that we look for, and put them to work and start seeing where that forms. Um, Super interesting, different from what most people do, because they're like, I needed somebody yesterday in this specific spot. So that's different. But in both cases, it sounds like you would agree we need to get really clear about what's expected in that space, and how and what success looks like. The trust but verify requires that we hand off ownership very clearly. Here's what I'm giving you. And even if that's a special project, here's the special project. Here's the parameters. Here's what winning looks like. And then you can give all the freedom in the world to say, now you own that. Um, and you're going to come back to me and tell me how it's going, right? Like, I'm going to verify that it happened.
Right.
But clear ownership is a key when organizing work and giving it to somebody else. We've got to be clear about those expectations and have some sort of reporting back, some sort of verify mechanism. And I love that you brought that up.
Yes. My for fun activity is aviation. And so my side hustle, not even for income, just for fun, is I'm a commercial pilot, flight instructor, and advanced ground instructor. And anytime I have a day off and some time to kill, I'll be flying an airplane. And one thing that's been fascinating is how aviation has changed the way I communicate, because the stakes are high and there are rules. And so when I learn how to talk to somebody, I think of air traffic control and like, I need the exact right information. I got to get it the first time. And if they have questions, we're going to slow everybody down. And it's been cool to see how that has changed the way I think and operate.
That's another great framing that you bring to this business. From, I mean, you didn't mention a pre-flight checklist, but from that to the air traffic control, the precision, the important communication that's happening. Yeah, high stakes. And if we
Very
brought that
much.
kind of attention and I guess level of importance to all the work that we did in our businesses, we'd probably get it wrong fewer times. So uh,
Yes.
yeah, really cool, really cool. Okay, that's been that one. We could call this a wrap, and that would be a great episode. But we still have part two, which is you're a business owner today. You're not just the guy that learned all those lessons you just shared, but you're a business owner now. There's current realities that you're working with as the team continues to grow, and you're at a different stage than you were before. Um, what could we talk about? How can I help you that might be useful to other business owners also?
Yeah, and I think the subject of growth is a really good place to focus for everybody, because it's universal. It's something that most of us generally need, assuming we'd like to take things to the next level, which is a healthy thing. That being said, I've always been a little bit cautious about it. I remember once when I was little, my dad was talking about business success and growth and all that, and he was talking about the simplest business in the world. And the example he used was the guy down the street who sharpens ice skates, right? He's got the right machine. He sharpens however many skates a day you can sharpen. He clocks out. He eats some food, spends some time with the family, and goes to sleep. Now, the world of growth would pressure him to say, well, how are we going to make sure we sharpen twice as many skates next year? But this guy, like, might not want to sharpen them faster or hire people. He just wants to sharpen skates and eat food and spend time with his family. And so, like, that's okay. And I think something that has given me is just this perspective on, like, if there is a target, a specific definition of success, what happens once you get there? Do you keep growing because the world's telling you growth is part of what should happen next? Maybe. And, like, don't get me wrong, double the profit would certainly open up some doors, and I'm not opposed to it. But if I was to be 10 times as profitable, but 50 times as stressed and half as happy, I would call that a net loss in overall success. And I think that's important. And it's been important throughout. Even when I was a much smaller business, this pressure to diversify and do more than just college events or do other things or broaden and chase more revenue. I said no because I knew what our lane was and I knew where we were going. And hilariously, the result was way more success and profit because of that choice. So the money started flowing much better as soon as I stopped focusing on the flow of money as the key metric of success, which sounds a little bit inception-y or backwards or recursive. But intentional growth, intention should always be attached to growth. And that I think is something that's been important for me and for the company. But at the same time, it's definitely limiting because if I'm so nervous about growing and losing happiness and losing balance and all that, that does mean there's somebody, down the street who would kill for exactly the service we provide and would love to pay for it. And I do want to connect with those people and I do want to be open to those conversations. So that I think is it's a good thing, but it definitely has some limitations too. So how to grow intentionally and make authentic connections that are truly a win-win.
Yeah, I love what you're raising here. I do think that it's the default for most business owners to think revenue growth is, is the objective, right? The end all be all. I love the reminder that our businesses are meant to serve other purposes for us and for our team. And I want to come back to that as well. But for you, as the founder of this business, if the business is meeting exactly what you set out to do, well, let's not push it off the rails, right? Let's keep that intact. Um, However, as I think you alluded to, there will be some potential customers left unserved. There could be potentially if you don't grow to meet the full demand that's out there. And I guess a correlating reality to that is there could be, would be, ought to be competitors that will happily take up the demand that you're not, right? That you're not serving. And there's always a chance that they could eclipse you guys in capability, in scale, scope, whatever, because they have more experience. They get more of the available at bats, and they start batting better than you as a result, right? They can
True.
start taking some of the key talent, the key vendor relationships, all that stuff can start to move where there's more critical mass than what you've built with yours. And so I don't like to take a paranoid approach to business. It's not my typical come from, but there are a lot of business minds out there that would say grow or die, right? We've all heard those phrases, grow or die. And
Hmm.
and I don't think you're saying don't grow. You used a very important term, intentional growth. I don't want to outpace the benefits that I like. I don't want to grow past or destroy the good things that we have going on in the name of grabbing more revenue, right? So I'm
Right.
with you entirely. What I named some potential downsides to not growing at the pace that the market would offer to you. Um, are there any other downsides in your mind to not growing?
Well, there's the concern of diluting the product, right? If I have 60 shows instead of 30, does that
Mm,
mean each of them get half the attention and expertise and focus of me or the team? And yes, you could double the size of the team and train people up so that we're always combating that, and that's
right.
okay. But there is something magical about saying like my next show is late August. We had a meeting about it today. So our team's like gears are turning and we're like, what if we used a blue background behind that? What would that look like? I don't know. Build one. Let's prototype it. Let's stare at it together next week and then go to breakfast.
Yeah.
Like I love that because I think that thing with the blue background in late August is going to look perfect
Yeah.
because of the attention to detail we've been able to afford it. And if we had 20 other shows before then, even if we had a bigger team, I think something might slip in the attention to detail. So there's a risk there for sure, um, because it's sort of like a concierge level attention that our clients get and they've become accustomed to, and that now is the product, which is both part of the limitation we're talking about here, but it's also part of what's going to make us grow. Because if the one person adds us to their stable next year, it's because we're going to give them that same level of focus and grow intentionally. And what I like about that is it makes us less interchangeable. So, you talked about people gobbling up our clients and our business. The level of complexity of each of our handful of shows is such that it would be really hard to swoop in and take over, because they would have no idea about where all the moving parts are, where the files are, how it's been done for the last 10 years. We have this kind of built-in retention because of how central we've been in these annual projects,
Mm.
and that's been really cool. And so the attention to detail helps enforce that as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's get at the core of intentional growth here for the remaining 10-ish minutes that we have. And when I think of intentional growth, so the stakes are pretty high, right? Like in your personal life might be affected in the wrong way. You talked about being, 50% more stressed or half as happy. That's a big
Mhm.
deal. That's not
Yeah.
quantified in dollars, but that's a big deal. And when we as business owners start something with the idea of freedom, whether that's time freedom, money freedom, whatever freedom, we start restricting those freedoms because of growth. That doesn't feel good. So the stakes are pretty high. We don't want to grow just for growth's sake. We want to do it in a way that maintains or enhances the benefits that we get out of the current thing. So how can we do that in a more intentional way? You said something interesting, Bobby, when you talked about this example you gave of the show end of August, and we have space and time right now. By the way, we're recording this in the first couple of weeks of July, so team has 6 weeks to talk about some of these ideas, and and if you had more and more shows, yes, you could have more team, but it sounded to me like you felt that more team does not necessarily mean the same level of quality or the same level of experience for your clients. And I want to push on that just a little bit. Do you feel like you have to be involved in all of the shows for them to work, or are
Not
there key
anymore.
people?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, I was still on every show, and it was a lot. And I learned at that time. I remember going up to my production manager and saying, "Hey, like it seems like you got enough people here. It seems like everything's going smooth. How would you feel if I were to not be here for the rest of the night?" And his response was, "I don't know why you're here right now. Like, please go away, go home, relax. Like, I
Yeah.
don't need you here. My job's to be here." And what I learned in that moment was that I was limiting my team. I was standing in the way of their growth. And in fact, if a client had walked in the room and I was there and my production manager was there, they were going to come to me and say, "Hey, Bobby, question on this. We're bumping this. We're changing this." And then I'd say, "Got it." And I'd turn to the production manager and parrot the same stuff back.
Yeah.
Turns out leaving elevated the production manager, which was great. So it's kind of the same trust but verify. But getting out of the way is a really important piece of that. And so when you do have the right people in place and get out of their way, it does open up the option for scaling and taking on more stuff and building a team that could sharpen twice as many ice skates in an intentional way.
And I love the ice skating analogy, except that I can't relate to it. I'm calling from Phoenix, Arizona. Here in the
Ah,
desert, we don't do ice skating. So I'm like, what are ice skates?
sharpening roller skates then?
Yeah, that's right. Uh, Rollerblades. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know what we do here in the desert. We die during the summer. That's what we do. Anyway, your comments kind of fascinating. If I just play this back, you basically said I got out of the way and it went fine. So at
Mhm.
what point do you feel like, is it, if you doubled the amount of shows today, where would the breaks be in your team? Because I hear you saying I don't want to outgrow the good things we have. Where's the concern right now?
I don't feel that concerned, except for that client that needs us that we're not connecting with. That's the gap.
Okay. So if that client found you and you connected with them and they said, yes, we want to move forward, you actually don't have the concern of like getting more stressed or being less happy, you personally.
Right. Well, we have, for example, I've got an inbound call right after this where somebody said, I heard about you guys. I heard you do great work. I think this could be exactly what we need. Can we talk? And because my brain is not currently bogged down by operational stuff for these next couple shows, I'm like, yeah, let's definitely talk for an hour. And if it's a good fit, super excited to take it on. And if we did need to add a role to the team between now and then to back it up, that would be fine. So I think it's been a win because my own brain is much more relaxed to look for where we're going next and direct the team in the right direction with that intentional growth in mind. But the only missing piece is how do we authentically connect with the people that have the problem that we solve in a way that we're able to grow if we need to meet the increasing demand.
Got it. Got it. Well, okay. So I think earlier on I may have misunderstood because I thought you were using intentional growth as a description of, I'm afraid if we grow, things will start breaking. But I don't actually hear that from you. I think it's more a proactive approach of, I just want to make sure we do it in a way that things don't start breaking, but you don't have any
Right.
concerns about taking on more customers. So let's talk about
The right customer.
the right ones. Yeah. Of course, the
Yes.
focused in your lane, we're the best in the world at kinds of customers. Um,
Yes.
so along those lines, I think what might be helpful for you is what are some business level guardrails that we could put up that would help us see if we're starting to take on too much growth? Because like, how do how do you govern how much we should take on or we shouldn't? And I would look back on your history, and I would look at the times where the growth felt like it was too much. I would look at it as a percentage, right? Like if we had X amount of business the year before and we grew by 50% the next year, did we start to feel that in a way that, things were starting to rattle? And go to your
Mhm.
airplane analogies, right? The turbulence was so much that we started to fear that the rivets might start coming off of the wings or something,
Yeah.
right? So, if you can look back over your history and use that as a guide, maybe there's a range where growth felt comfortable, and then I would
Mhm.
I would couple that with a revenue per employee number that says, "Hey, are we adequately staffed to handle
Mm.
the need that's coming?" I love that emergent thing that you do with your team, an emergent approach to your org development. But at some point, you have to at least have a future org chart in mind that says, if we were to grow, let's say we were to double over the next 5 years, I'll just call it. What would
Mhm.
the org structure need to look like at that point? If you're relatively
Mhm.
flat today, twice as many people might not be well led by a super flat organization. So you have to start thinking a little bit in terms of functional leadership, how these departments take shape, that kind of thing. Otherwise, even intentionally growing at a rate of revenue growth might not be matched with an intentional organization development plan, and
Mhm.
that could
Yeah,
cause you some problems down the road. So I would
that's
look back.
interesting.
Yeah, go ahead. You can comment on that.
Yeah. So it's interesting because this harkens all the way back to the I'm an engineer and need the data, and I want to protect the emotional benefit of all this stuff as well. And this is an interesting trend to look into because of course we have financial data, which as you can imagine I don't spend a ton of time staring at because that kind of is incidental to my
Mhm.
perspective.
Uh-huh.
What I do have is emotional data. Because we're a happiness focused company and stress is the enemy and happiness is the goal, everybody on the team who's getting paid any sort of base salary has to submit weekly reports. And it says, how happy are you from 1 to 5? How stressed are you from 1 to 5? And how much are you being utilized from 1 to 5?
Mhm.
And you can see quick issues there because if you're more stressed than happy, we got to have a conversation right now. We got to hit the brakes. If you're constantly 100% utilized and never happy enough, there's certain rules that need to be protected, and I see that every week. What I have not done is added a column of revenue or cash flow or anything financial to literally look at the connection between, as time goes on, what's been going on with the finances and what's been going on with the team emotionally. And I think that's a really cool thing to think about.
Well, most business owners don't have the option to go back and look at happiness and stress levels. So I think that is amazing, right? So just like you
Yeah.
said, you could map that trend line over time against the growth of the company and see if the growth was outpacing the happiness, or if there was correlating stress levels going up because we were growing too fast. That's a super interesting look. So I wish maybe we could have
Yeah.
a part two of our conversation someday and just have you share
Crunching the
what you
numbers.
found. But that's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I would definitely look at that. And I was thinking about revenue per employee as just a sense of, we had this many people and this much revenue, and where did it feel comfortable and where did it feel off. But you don't even have to do that like subjectively. You can go back and look
Yeah.
at those, happiness scores, and I know the reporting is subjective, but you know what I mean. There's actual trend data that you can look at, and I think that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Well,
um,
and obviously, I think the goal is peak happiness. I think we all like medium stress and maybe medium utilization. And if we can do that, maybe we work backwards. Just find, like you said, that magic number for revenue growth to target proactively, and that becomes our strategy.
yeah, and if you couple that with a little bit of, back to your intentionality word, forward looking, we I really do like the emergent approach to your team building that you're doing. Um, you can't emergent your way to an intentional destination, right? So you kind of have to get clear about what that future thing might need to look like if we want to keep growing. What does that org
Mhm.
structure have to look like eventually to support that growth? And then,
Yeah.
maybe we can kind of emergent our way to that, eventually. But you want to be intentional in thinking about that future org structure, look back on the trends that we just talked about, and I think that'll help you triangulate on what's a good growth rate for us to pursue.
Yeah. I love it.
All right, well, Bobby, this was super fun. I've never had somebody talk about their team's happiness level and stress level on a weekly basis the way you're doing it. I'm super intrigued and interested in that. Again, we'll have to
Thanks.
maybe save that for a future episode. But if people want to learn more about your team over at GBM Six, what you guys are doing, or connect with you online, how would they do that?
Yeah, check out the website, gbm6.com. Or if you're intrigued by the pilot thinking, check out thinklikeapilot.com, which is my speaking business. And find me on LinkedIn. Would be happy to chat with anybody or connect there.
Very good, Bobby. It was super fun. Thank you again for being here.
Thanks, Brett. Appreciate you.
All right, for everybody out there listening, please like, share, review, comment, do all those things to help these episodes get in front of as many seven-figure business owners as possible. We want to help all those businesses have the intentional businesses that create the results in their life that Bobby and I were talking about today. Thanks again for being here, and tune in next time for another episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast.